Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're talking about co-parenting through coercive control, responding with power, protecting with love. And I am so excited about today's guest. I have Dr. Christine Cocchiola. Coercive control doesn't end with separation. When there are kids involved, the stakes actually get even higher. And today we're going to explore how coercive control impacts both you, the parent, and your children, and how you, the protective parent, can respond with clarity, strength, and love. Dr. Christine Cocchiola is such a passionate advocate and expert in this area of coercive control. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different topics today. You can read all about her background in the show notes, but I want to dive right in and have a really powerful session. And so check out the show notes, which has all of her contact information. And without further ado, Dr. Christine Cocchiola, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. You've been so patiently waiting for me to be able to come on, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I don't think, as I said to you offline, I don't think I have a single client or listener or follower who doesn't need to hear this conversation. And I would love to dive into the topic of the parent and some of the things that you see the parent doing because of their trauma and wounds and fear that don't serve them, right? Because there's such a sense of, I have no control. He or she has all of the control and I'm screwed. And so I want to talk about that and how we can empower the parent. And then, of course, the children and the struggle of the child. And so if we could kind of balance both of those folks, Christine and I have already talked about the fact that she's coming back. We're going to have more conversations, but I'd like to have a little bit of that broad stroke conversation to set the foundation for the work that you do and the things that these parents really need, strategies so that they can live with a little bit more peace and joy post-divorce, even though that other parent is there doing what they're doing.
Co-parenting with an abuser is a misnomer. There's really no such thing as co-parenting, but we have to make the systems believe that that's our intent, all right? Because these people can be so adversarial that they will unfortunately darvo us, right? Deny any wrongdoing and attack the healthy parent. And so sometimes the best defense is a good offense, is to be very strategic in how to navigate the relationship dynamics with the abusive parent. But if they're an abusive partner, then they are an abusive parent. I mean, I think that there's a lot of disconnect oftentimes, right? That people make assumptions that they were treated poorly, that there was abuse in the relationship. Maybe they didn't even call it abuse. Maybe they just said it was toxic or unhealthy, right? And the reality is when someone uses a pattern of behavior to exert power and control over you, to diminish you, to use your vulnerabilities against you, to make you walk on eggshells, to be smaller and smaller in your own family system, then we really need to believe and understand that our children are experiencing the exact identical experiences, even if they adore this parent, quote unquote, even if they think this parent is the best dad or mom in the world. That children, of course, are going to feel that way about a caretaker that their very existence is
Relies
reliant
on.
upon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what I try to do is to really hone in on this idea that if you suffered in a certain way and you couldn't authentically be yourself in this relationship dynamic, then know that your children cannot authentically be themselves.
Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah. That's so beautifully put. I have said so many times how someone does one thing is how they do everything. And so the way that your spouse or ex has treated you, and my children were very young, and I don't think I believed that he would treat the kids that way because at 2 and 4, he adored them. My kids, before they hit double digits, started experiencing so much of what I experienced. And I think there's a danger of assuming the child is fine and because they love mommy or they love daddy. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of us living in our delusion, the impact of the safe parent living in that delusion? What is the danger of that?
Yeah, so I always say that even when a 2 and a 4-year-old adore their parent, right? That abusive person, day one, knew that these children were something that could be weaponized. They know because so the moment that a protective, safe parent is holding that baby in their arms, there's two things that happen to abusive people. One is there is a recognition that that love that protective, safe parent has for that child is something that abusive parent could never, ever have. And it ignites so much shame in them, so much shame in them.
Oh, I just got chills. I've never heard anyone say it that way. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah. And so then, two is in the back pocket. If anything ever happens here, I know what matters most to this person. And so there is this, we think abusers get bad post separation. Well, no, they were bad in the marriage or the relationship. They get worse. Coercive control always intensifies post separation. It always gets worse because what you've done is you've exposed the abuser. The abuser is losing control and they can't lose control. But that this stuff, this crap starts day one. It's just we don't know it. We're living in that, to your point, gaslit world.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, for me, the other thing that seems so obvious is the minute I'm holding a baby and loving on that baby, they get less of my love and my attention and my caretaking because we've got a little person that needs us. And what impact does that piece of it have? Because I've heard so many clients say things were not great, but pretty good. And then we started a family. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so there's, of course, envy, right? Abusers are highly envious people. They become really bent on the fact that they're not getting their supply, whatever they need from that protective, safe parent. It's interesting though, because I think a lot of people, and I'm not suggesting you're saying this, but a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to have a baby and this person will be like, there is an understanding that these people become envious and then maybe are angry about all the attention the baby's taking from the protective parent. But I have seen many times the opposite, and that is that now that protective, safe parent is no longer the golden person in the life. Now the children replace. And that certainly happened in my situation where all of a sudden I would be wondering why I was not important anymore and feeling guilty and shame about feeling less important than my children. And then I would have other people say, oh, he's such a wonderful father. He loves them so much. You're so lucky he doesn't want to go out and leave all the time and go out on a date with you. At least he wants to be with the family. So there was all this other worldly gaslighting going on, right? And so I've seen it play out in both ways. There is an extreme envy of this baby that's taking my place in your life, but I've also seen the baby take the place of the protective, safe parent. The bottom line is these people don't know how to have healthy relationship dynamics.
Okay, so I have to say this, and my entire audience has to hear this. I am like, what, 18, 19 years post-divorce, and you just blew my mind because my ex-husband would never go out with me. He would never go on vacation. For my 40th birthday, which was the straw that broke the camel's back, I said, whatever you do, do not throw me a surprise party. We need a second honeymoon. We need to go away. The kids will be fine with your parents. And then I walked into a surprise party. And I never connected those dots, but because I was like, come on, they're fine. And his parents lived 10 blocks away. I was like, it's fine. But he would never.
No. So when children are born, right, oftentimes with abusers is what you just demonstrate. Is like oftentimes the protective, safe parent, the partner becomes a lower standard in the household, right? Yeah. And so, or the abuser becomes outraged because the children feel more like a priority than he is. And I'll say he, but you know, this can go both ways, right? I remember thinking people were like, why are you upset? Like, at least he prioritizes the children. And it was like, but if we don't have a relationship, then we don't have, what is the family, right? Mhm,
100%, right. And
mhm.
I got that kind of feedback too. So that's just brilliant. That is such a new perspective for me. So thank you for that. And I hope each of you find value in this conversation as well. One more question I want to ask you. Everybody calls every abuser a narcissist these days. Now, I would like you, since I didn't say it, can you give our audience a little bit of your background so that they understand that this is coming from such a depth of knowledge? And then can you just speak to today's day and age where this word and this diagnosis from lay people is overused and maybe what the danger of that is?
For sure. So I've been doing this work since the age of 19. And for your listeners, it's important for them to know that I began my work as a domestic abuse, sexual assault crisis counselor. I did that work for 35 years in a volunteering agency. Yet I met my partner when I was 16, and I stayed married to him for 27 years and 11 months. I had no idea I was suffering abuse because it was all covert. Yeah. And so we were together over 35 years, my virtually more than half of my life when I finally decided to leave, not the first time, not the second time, not the third time, right? So it takes multiple attempts to leave these people because they lure you back in, right? And so as a therapist, someone doing this work and helping people in abusive relationships, I did not realize it because I was looking through the violent incident model. And I also had so much intermittent reinforcement, some positive experiences, of course, the family, the patriarchal and societal norms that we're built upon that hurts both men and women, boys and girls, right? This idea that women are supposed to be accommodating, that we're supposed to work hard. And so I would say that knowing the clinical aspects of narcissistic personality disorder. First of all, let's be really clear. Most of these people who behave in these harmful ways have traits of narcissism and borderline. We don't really talk about the borderline part too much, and we should. It's that black and white thinking. It's love, hate. It really is this a fear and significant fear of abandonment that it really, the diagnosis narcissism is not complete when we think about these harmful people. What I prefer is to highlight the fact that they are coercive controllers because the behaviors they're doing is coercing and controlling. So,
Can you just define that for the listener who's
sh-
not sure what that means?
sure. So, coercive control is individuals and groups of individuals intending to exert power and control over another, to diminish another, to take away their agency, to take away their autonomy. Think about cult leaders. Think about macro systems, governments, and policies. I see coercive control as the underpinning of all abuse, racism, sexism. Why is someone racist? It's because they think they're better than the other person. They want to exert power and control over another person. Why are groups of people engaged in sexist behaviors? Because they believe that they have the rights to exert power and control over another. It's all based in patriarchy. Bell Hooks talks about this intersection. Kimberly Crenshaw talks about the intersection of all of these oppressions of people and how it diminishes them and how it creates more power. Oftentimes, power is not just about power, but it's about fame. Oftentimes, it's not just about power, but it's about fortune. Think about people in the business world who have taken advantage of other people. Think about movie moguls, Jeffrey Epstein, all of these people, sex trafficking, all of these things I see as coercive control. So for me, and I work very closely with Dr. Ramani, who is a narcissistic abuse expert, and she and I have these conversations. She says that the people she typically works with are like maybe up to a 5 or a 6 on the spectrum of narcissism. So 1 to 10 spectrum of narcissism. I work with the tens. Every single one of my clients, their abusers are doing, they're sadistic. They're doing whatever they can to fully harm that family system, the children. They don't care what they use. They don't care how they do it. They're going in. Some abusers, you can negotiate with them and you could say, listen, if I give you the house, I'll take full custody. Or if I give you the house, I'll take 60% of the custody. These abusers want to take custody just because they know what matters most. So back to your question. Not all narcissists are coercive controllers. Not all narcissists are narcissistic abusers. They're pains in the asses and people don't like to be around them sometimes, and they're grandiose and they're annoying. But all coercive controllers are narcissistic abusers. If it's a good way to help people.
So they're on the spectrum.
They're on the spectrum.
But we're all on the spectrum. So they're on the spectrum. And is the average person like a 1 or 2 on the narcissistic spectrum? If life is a spectrum, and I want you to just explain this piece because I think it's so important for people to understand. The statement you just made, can you refine it a little bit?
So there's differing views out there. Some people say we all have a level of narcissism, right? I prefer to take the word, and so does Ramani. Dr. Ramani prefers to take the term narcissism out of it.
Okay.
We all have a good level of self-worth and self-confidence. And the problem is that when that becomes the thing that we're always leading with, it becomes problematic. When we have to outshow someone, when we have to manipulate a little bit to get our way, to make ourselves look better, when we don't have the ability to be self-reflective. And so for me, we don't all have narcissistic tendencies. What some of us have is healthy self-worth. And sometimes that means that maybe at a party, we're going to scream and shout that we just did something really wonderful at our job and we got a raise. Does that make us a narcissist? No. Right? So in
So the
general,
tendencies, so there's a tipping point where you would put them on the spectrum.
yeah. And I think probably one of the number one indicators that I see as where they would be on the spectrum is the inability to be self-reflective. The inability to say, oh crap, I kind of actually just made that all about me. I'm really sorry. The inability to really see that other people in the room have felt uncomfortable about it, right? And then to take responsibility. And that's the huge part. So yeah, when I think about people who have these tendencies, they are narcissists in some way, low level, annoying, whatever, and others more harmful. And I do want to go back to something you said before, because I think you asked the question about the problems of us gaslighting ourselves, but also what happens in these family systems.
Yeah.
I recently met with Robin Stern, who is the Gaslight Effect author, and she's amazing. And we have this discussion about how we often spend a lot of time in abusive relationships gaslighting ourselves, right? We don't want to believe it's as bad as it is, right? And that what victims have a tendency of doing is creating the abusers, going back to what coercive control is, they push our boundaries. They try to take away our agency. And what victims do is we say, sure, that's okay. All right, no worries. Oh, we're going to go out to dinner. We're going to have a good time tonight. They're not that bad, even though last week they may have called me a bad name. And so we stop intersecting the patterns of behavior, and the patterns become very fragmented, which makes it harder for us to see clearly, which helps us disassociate, which makes us gaslight ourselves. I'm going to take it one step further, just because we're talking a little bit about parenting, right? What protective parents they do very well is they spend a lot of time, I don't call it gaslighting because gaslighting has malicious intent, disintegrating their children's intuition about what's really going on.
Thank you for saying that. Please explain.
So if there's abuse going on, but you're always running around saying, hey, can we talk about this out in the garage? Or dad was just in a bad mood, or mom didn't mean to swear at you and she didn't mean to swear at me. She's just having a rough day. And you're making all kinds of excuses, or you're regulating your behavior so much that the abuser never gets to the point of escalation as much. The abuser is able to retain equilibrium because you are controlling the system in the family. Right? And so when we do that, we literally are robbing our children of their intuition, because they are feeling it but we are trying hard to protect them. But in protection, so intuition, disintegration, literally disintegrating their body from their mind, disintegrating it, making it go away. And when we do that, we wonder why when they're 12, 14, 15, and the abuser shows up with a new car or new phone or says, come and stay with me. You don't have to stay. You can go out past curfew. I won't keep you to the same rules. We wonder why the children forget all of the harms that were going on in the family system.
We've trained them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter in her late teens, early 20s, told me that she had been dissociating since early grade school, which broke my heart that she was a straight A student. She was an all-star sports player. She just flew under the radar. And I actually wrote a blog post after that conversation. Don't assume the kid flying under the radar is okay. But to your point, it was like, it was the only way she could handle it. And it had such long-lasting impacts on her life. And I'm running a group right now, and I know every one of the women are listening. And what I would love for you to talk about is they fear being honest with the kids as bashing the ex and breaking the rules. And so we've been talking about this in the group and individually, but can you just kind of put a dot on the top of this conversation with answering that concern?
I just want to go back to your daughter. So, right, we have 4 major trauma responses. Your daughter learned that being in flight was a safer place for her to be. People who are in flight as a trauma response are perfectionists, high achieving, consistently like being the A student, doing really well. Everybody thinks they're fine. And I always say to my parents, okay, maybe your kid is fine, but maybe that's their trauma response. Yeah. So for me, it's always about obviously never, ever, ever disparaging the abuser, but calling out behaviors. And so there is absolutely no reason why when your child comes home and maybe, they witnessed an argument at the other person's house and they're really upset about it. There's no reason why we can't say, I'm really sorry you had to hear that. And it's too bad adults sometimes do things like that where they'll do inappropriate things in front of kids and they really shouldn't do that. And I'm sorry that happened to you. And
Mm.
so, but when it's happening in our own home, also, instead of saying, Dad really, this is a big one for me. Dad really loves you. Don't say that. Abusers don't know how to love. We don't have to say dad hates you. We don't have to say dad doesn't love you, but we do not have to affirm a lie. And affirming a lie is gaslighting them. And I know you don't have malicious intent, so I'm going to say you're disintegrating their intuition. That's what you're doing. Do not affirm for them something that's not true. Dad didn't mean to yell at you. He just had a rough day. I'm sorry that lately it seems like there's a lot of yelling going on. You don't have to say dad yelled. If you're afraid of family court and all of those things, you don't have to say dad yelled. You can just say, there's been a lot of yelling going on in this house, and I'm really sorry that's been happening.
So acknowledge the behavior without assassinating the character.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. We
I
don't
want
have
to,
to assassinate because he assassinates abusers, assassinate our character. So then ask yourself, a child's going between one home where your character is constantly being assassinated, then they come home and you're not being as mean, but you're definitely diminishing that other person because they are an abuser, rightfully so.
but the child is stuck in the middle going, who's telling the truth? What's going on here?
We have to level up. We have to elevate ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to show our children that we are so different than that abuser that they have no doubt in their mind where they are actually safe.
Yeah. And what I love about that is if my clients get healthy, get confident, like rebuild, heal their trauma, they're so much more able to support the children, not only with whatever their difficult parent is, but there's just a lot of difficult people in the world and a lot of toxic people in the world. And so my thought is, well, my 4 and 6-year-old never should have had to start at that age and go through that. They're 26 and 28, and they are rock stars. They are emotionally intelligent. They have boundaries. They have direct communication. And I watch how they handle the boss, the neighbor, the partner who's not healthy. And I'm so proud of what they learned. And so it's just a long, hard journey, isn't it? Doing like not just being single parenting, but single parenting while you're keeping that in mind and supporting the kids and training them in the skills. But the gift to me seems so priceless on the other side.
Oh, he's just said that so well. Absolutely. You got to see your children. This is the thing, the human brain is extremely resilient. And, there's neuroplasticity. We know that the brain changes. The good news is it does. I always say children growing up in these family systems have broken brain, and people are like, that's awful. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, if your kid came home with a broken leg, how would you treat them? You treat them differently. Their brains are broken by these abusers. They leave your house, they go to the abuser's house. They're coming home with a whole bunch of horrible crap. How do you handle that differently? And then I know that it's hard. I've been doing this work since I was 19, but I created this program where parents actually learn skill sets. And the reason why is because I had two kids coming home who didn't believe, they thought I was crazy. They thought there was something wrong with me. They were hearing the false narrative. And as a therapist, I'm like, whoa, this is a whole new ball game now. I didn't realize that he had started indoctrinating them when they were 9 and 10.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I'll just say my daughter came to me in her early 20s and she was like, I'm so sorry for all those years. Daddy said so much and you said so little. And I just,
mm,
and now I know, but I didn't know. And it just broke my heart that she even had to go through that. But she got to the other side and she was like, I'm clear and I love you for being so protective. And I think it's the balance because I'm talking to these parents and they're protecting the children, but they're also protecting the spouse unknowingly, right? Because I can't say and I shouldn't say and I'll make believe. And so that's a that's an interesting line that you're saying to walk, be honest and comment on the behavior, just not the person or the character.
and create, oftentimes, if it doesn't feel safe, create examples from outside of the family system. Tell your child about a person at work who keeps parking in your parking spot, and they're not supposed to be doing that, and how you advocated for yourself and they were really angry, but how you handled it. Make up stories
Mm.
to create understanding for them. And so, like, you can slam on the brakes in your car because somebody like went through a stop sign, and you can be like, damn it, and you could be angry, and you could say, oh my gosh, I think I just had my survival response because. And so we can really psychoeducate them in a manner that gives them clarity about other relationship dynamics, their friends on the playground, their peer groups, their high school band leader, whatever it is. And then sometimes, if we feel safe, we can
Mhm.
say, wow, I'm sorry that that vacation didn't happen that you thought was going to happen. That must have really hurt.
Yeah, beautiful. So for the children, we've talked about some strategies for the parent. If we could just look at maybe a couple of different age groups, and I'd especially like to talk about teenagers who are so self-focused in that stage of their life. I can't tell you over 15 years how many clients told me, my kid is a narcissist, just like his or her parent. Can you guide us in that area a little bit?
So I would say, first of all, you know what every child's worst fear is? That their safe, protective parent thinks they are like the abuser. And so if you are trying to create healthy psychological development, not for one moment on this green earth should you ever let your child think that you think they're anything like the abuser. That's their greatest fear. And some of them are mimicking the behaviors. And I know it's very triggering and overwhelming, but we are the adults.
Yeah.
And when we respond to them in a healthy way, in a way that doesn't further shame them. I said to you before we got on the call, the perfect recipe for becoming a narcissist is shaming a child.
Mm.
is taking away their ability to be authentically themselves. So if we are trying really hard to help them heal by responding in an appropriate way, in a healthy way, then in that, their chances of being healthy are much greater. And guess what? Our brains heal at the same time. That's the most amazing thing people don't realize. So it's this really cool, there's research out there. It's so amazing. But you know the story. If you tell yourself you're going to do great in an interview, your chances of doing greater in an interview are greater. The law of attraction, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you act like that child who's screaming and yelling at you and calling you a horrible name is really the 3-year-old cutie pie that you were pushing up the steps on the slide to slide down the slide with. You act like there's someone different, and your brain will believe you're not as threatened, and your brain actually will heal. And so if you tell yourself, I'm really overwhelmed and stressed, and my child is triggering me, and you tell yourself that, or you tell yourself, you know what? This is my beautiful baby who I know at 3 years old knew how to love me unconditionally. And I'm going to teach this child, damn it, to love unconditionally again and feel safe with me. Your brain will listen to you. But if you don't get your brain off of the track, it's like a track. If you don't do something to trip up the track, it will only stay on. So it's this example of what we talk about with, it's a philosophical idea, but that the brain and the mind are two different parts of our lives, right? And so you have to, the brain is not always your friend. The brain wants you to believe you're going to fail. The brain wants you to be afraid to get on that plane that had maybe turbulence last week. Your brain wants you to feel those things. And some of those things are really important. They help us to feel safe. But when it comes to our children, we have to, in order to heal them, we have to regulate. And in order for us to regulate, we have to begin to heal ourselves. So pretend you're healed. Pretend you're safe. Pretend you're okay. Your child will pick up on that, and that will create synergy in healing. And that's what they need more than anything.
I've learned about co-regulating, but you're
Mm.
talking about co-healing.
Yeah, it is co-regulation that leads to co-healing
Yeah.
and synergy. We heal in synergy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Beautiful. So
Hmm.
I have a question for you, and I'm going to use one of my kids again, diagnosed with a number of different things, including borderline. And so now I have a child who's self-loathing, loathing her father for giving her the mental challenges, the neurodiversion, but also self-loathing because she's so much better now, but in her younger, sloppier days, presented, and she saw herself presenting so similar to dad. And I want to bring this up, and I think that she'd be pretty okay with it. We've talked about it, but I want to bring it up because I think that between socialization and biology, genetics, this happens sometimes. Can you just talk about if a parent has a child who is either being diagnosed or who's presenting in a situation like this, what do you advise?
So I also come from a different camp in this area too.
I like your camp so far.
So the DSM-5 that created all the diagnoses in the world, right, was created by psychiatrists who were male, who did not do any research studies, who actually just went along with what they saw as behavior traits. And the problem is that much of the information that we have and that we know of today is that behaviors are created by trauma. And when you take a child who grew up in a family system where they were not allowed to authentically be themselves, they had to hide who they really were because it wasn't safe. What happens is devaluing occurs inside, and the world on the outside feels very unsafe. And when the world feels unsafe, it feels like it's either good or bad. Like I can't function. Like it's not safe to go this way. It's not safe to go that way. And so is is borderline truly a diagnosis, or is it are the behaviors a symptom of trauma? And so for me, I think there's such a negative connotation to a lot of these diagnoses, and that's why I don't call them narcissists. I call them narcissistic abusers. They have the traits that we know align with the DSM, but they're abusers, right? And so I really have a hard time when people say, oh, mental health issues. These people have mental health issues, or abusers have bipolar disorder. No, they don't. People who have bipolar disorder have extreme highs and lows. And oftentimes those highs and lows are as it relates to a feeling of being out of control in their life when they've suffered trauma. People who have borderline behaviors have suffered a devaluation of themselves and an inability to authentically be themselves. Do they have borderline? No. They have borderline behaviors that if we can create safety for them, they're going to have less of those. And so, yeah, we have a huge problem. There is a lot of money to be made on diagnoses.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of money to be
My
made.
daughter was put on, now she's not, but she was put on 8 different medications. It was horrific. I had to regulate myself so that I didn't lose it on the psychiatrist. I was so angry. And that's exactly what you talked about. It was like one diagnosis after another, one pill after another. And I was like, are you kidding me? What are you doing to my baby, my kid?
Sure. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's trauma. And I think that's what I'm hearing more than anything. All of these kids are coming out of traumatic experiences when they're losing their innocence at such a young age. It's like, what do I have to do to stay safe?
and imagine being told that the one person that you know is safe is actually crazy, unstable, unsafe, needs to be on their meds. They're the cheater, they're the liar. So there's betrayal trauma that is very much intersecting both, because I'm betrayed by the abuser because I know what the abuser does when they're disappointed and upset. I can't trust them. But I'm also now betrayed by the one person that maybe I thought was safe. And so this is a child who's untethered. No wonder you're going to have borderline traits. Like, of course you are.
Yeah.
That's not borderline. That's not the diagnosis of borderline. That's trauma.
And to your point earlier, the way we help our children heal from trauma is we heal ourselves, we do our work, we co-regulate, we co-heal, and then we get to really treasure the gift of doing that.
Absolutely. It's the no shame game. We can never, ever shame. That doesn't mean we don't call out bad behaviors, but we don't shame our children. And you can't call out a bad behavior when a child's dysregulated. You can't. That's not going to work. You've got to wait until they come to a place of regulation.
Yeah, because otherwise they're not in their thinking brain, are they? They're in fight, flight, and they're hearing wah, 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 wah,
Mhm.
wah.
And they're hearing you're bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
We obviously could talk for quite a long time. I want to honor everybody's time. If you were to leave our guests with 1 or 2 of your key strategies that you share, or tips or tools, whatever that is, and then by all means, how they can find you, listen to you, learn from you.
Sure. I would say that a tip that I think is important is I call it the 3 Ps. When your children are coming home, I'd like you to predict what happened to them there. What's the messaging they heard about you? Get some sticky notes, write them on a wall. Write down they heard you drive a stupid car, that you don't keep a clean house, that you can't be trusted, that you were the cheater. Write down the things. Predict that your child heard those things at the abuser's house. And now, when they come in, by the way, you know this abuser better than anybody. And frankly, you know your kids better than anybody. There's a similar narration that's happening every time. It's always the same. You're lazy, whatever it is. Prepare. Prepare for that. Prepare your response. How are you going to respond to that when you're accused of being lazy tomorrow when they come home? Because
Mhm.
it better be different than how you've responded before, because before you've reacted, you've been triggered. Now I don't want you to be triggered. I want you to be, you predicted it. You know what's happening. You know what's going to happen when they walk in the door. Prepare yourself. And in that, you better protect your child and you better protect yourself. That's what you do. You are better protected because now you're not thrown off like guard by being called lazy again or being called stupid or the sociopath. You're like, oh, I expected that one. And you know what your response can be, by the way? Oh, I've heard that before. A little snarky, or I wonder where you heard that one. I'm not surprised. Now, you didn't say anything bad about the abuser, but you have helped the child to make the connection that you know that's not coming from their mouth.
Love that. I love that. When my kids used to come home, I felt like they were twirling dervishes. Like they left my calm little Buddha kids and then they came back bouncing off of the walls. So, what that energy was like that they were with for a day or a weekend or what have you, fighting, hitting each other, just being really kind of out of control. What do you suggest to parents who have some version of that when their children come home?
So I think it's important to sit down with the children if you can, or have a sit down on the floor, whatever it is, and say, we need to come up with a plan. What can be the plan when you come home from dad's house on Sunday? Let's come up with a plan. I do talk about, it's called a transition box, and you create a box with your child with their name. So say your daughter's name is Maggie, my cat sitting on my lap. I just did a reel on this. And so you have a box called Maggie's box. And before Maggie leaves, she gets to go to the box and she either gets a note from you, or maybe she gets her favorite little treat from a store or something like that that she can put in her pocket. And she knows that when she comes home, when she comes home, she's not coming home with that. It's nothing valuable. It could be a leaf from outside, right? And then when Maggie comes home, she goes to the box and you've left something there for her while she's been gone. It's
Oh, I
a pic.
love that.
It's a Polaroid picture of you and your girlfriend hiking. It's you went out to dinner with your sister and you missed her and you put the picture in there. So a Polaroid camera really is helpful, but also a note like, mommy missed you when I went for this hike and I found this really pretty rock. It looks like a heart, just like you. The child has a transition. These are traumatic transitions. And so creating the transition for them is helpful.
Oh my
So,
God, I just love that
oh,
idea.
thanks.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Dr. Christine, we must end. Where can people find you?
Coercive control consulting. I also call my website I Know Your Heart because nobody knows their children's hearts like their protective parents. And yeah, I'm on Instagram, as you know, and LinkedIn and wherever else. I do have a say that again.
You have a podcast?
I do podcast Perfect Prey because unfortunately, PREY, our children are perfect prey of the abuser.
Yeah. So you guys are podcasters. Please go check out her podcast. All of the links are in the show notes. So if you're driving or doing something else, no worries. Just go to the show notes. And would you come back and speak to us again?
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you so much for today. This was just so perfect and clarifying, I think, for so many, and blew my mind once or twice. So thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Happy to help in any way. As you know, we're all trying to do the best we can to help others. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
And I'll be back again real soon. So you guys have a great day. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.